Welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast that's all about real conversations for real transformation. I'm your host, Kat Polsinelli, professional speaker, MC, and best-selling international author. Here, we tackle the tough stuff, the mud that we all have found ourselves in. We talk about the pivots, the challenges, and the victories that shape our lives and our businesses. From overcoming trauma and finding your voice to navigating life's unexpected twists, we get raw, honest, and open. You'll hear from inspiring guests who share their stories of resilience, healing, and growth. Whether it's breaking through emotional abuse, embracing self-worth, or thriving in entrepreneurship, you'll find connection, empowerment, and the tools to keep you moving forward. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for stories that hit home and conversations that make a difference. Let's get real together. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I am always so excited to have you here with me today, and I definitely feel like as we are getting into, or I guess we're already in quarter four of 2025, these conversations have really been kind of geared toward how do you want to end your year? What are you looking to do next year? And how do you want to build your life over the next 5 to 10 years? And it's been really wonderful to see some of the people that I've had a chance to speak with recently that have really built some amazing things, just like our amazing guest, Jason, today. So, Jason, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, Kat, it's great to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited about this. I know you and I had a couple of conversations a while back, and I was really intrigued by what you have done and what you have built in your life and your local, which is super cool. You're actually one of the first people that is in my area that I've had a chance to interview. So I'm super excited about that. But do us all a favor, because I always like for you to be able to kind of explain who you are and what it is that you do. Will you give everybody a little bit of your backstory?
Sure. So Jason Yarusi, I do live here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee now, but I am from New Jersey. So I ended up moving down here about 5 years ago. I have 5 different businesses, the main one being a real estate investment firm where we buy apartment buildings. And since 2016, when we transitioned the business from single family into commercial real estate, we've brought a little over 3,000 units of apartment buildings. Down here, mainly in the Southeast, we have properties in 7 different states. And what we do is we usually syndicate those projects where we're bringing investors and they will partner with us alongside buying these buildings that will hold anywhere for 5 or 7 years. And when we buy these, we typically do some improvement plan to them, both on the revenue side and the expenses side, to make them operate better, make them a better place to live. And then ultimately, that will increase the bottom line for this, make them more valuable, where we will sell them to another investment team somewhere down the road.
That's awesome. And you said you have 5 businesses, right?
We do. Yeah,
That
we
is
do. So,
crazy.
yes, we have a good team, right? So we have the
Yeah.
investment firm. I have 2 different plumbing and HVAC companies, actually
Oh,
an electrical
nice.
business that I didn't even count in that, property management company. And then we have our coaching business that we help people through Live 100, which is a podcast that I have. It really about just living your best life and making sure you can go out there and just really perform at the level that you know you can by taking the actions that you've always been hesitant to.
And I think that that is in so much of alignment in the direction I feel like people are wanting to go. And we're starting to see this shift with a lot of people where people are tired of doing the same mundane things or the same thing that they've always been told to do, or the same things that society has said that we're supposed to believe that that's what we are supposed to do. And I think that it's wonderful that you have created this beautiful life of yours and 5 businesses. I just want to podcast and do some speaking. And right there, I'm like, it's a lot. So kind of backing up, before you got into all these businesses and especially your Live 100, is this where you expected to find yourself? Like, did you always know that this was the direction you wanted to go, or you wanted to build this type of wealth and something and legacy for your family? Or kind of what was the thought process before you got to this space?
No, not at all. The simple fact would be it would be very easy to say that this would be the path that I would be on, right? But all the lessons that I've learned, and many times you go into part where you're leading to what you want or leading away from what you don't want, and we get stuck in this pattern where we do something each day. It's like we're touching a stove each day when the stove is hot, but we keep doing it, right? And that becomes our life,
Mm-hmm.
and we get stuck in this pattern of routine of habits that you just say, "Oh, I guess this is it. I guess this is what I'm supposed to do," and then you are almost scared to go after what is possible because you can understand the downside because that's where you are, but you can't understand the upside. And so you'll say, well, it's better to stay where I am because it feels safer than going out there and just trying something new. And so during my high school and even like junior high, like my formative years, I just had a lot of things happen that were just, I lived in just a middle class town. It wasn't like a war zone. Like it wasn't all this crazy stuff. But, at 13, lost my friend to a boating accident. At 14, another friend committed suicide. At 15, a friend on the football team got in a car with a bunch of people who were doing drugs, ran into a tree, and they died. And at 17, my girlfriend, who I was with for 4 years, she got killed in a car accident. So it was
Oh
just
my
like bam,
gosh.
bam, bam, all these things
Yeah.
happening. And I just didn't know how to really, this is 30 something years ago, there wasn't this whole access to information. So I didn't really know how to process this. And so I just did it my own way, which was a lot internal. And so I was very lost in terms of my direction. Great grades in school, I did well in sports, but I just had no desire to like really take a next step because I just felt lost. So I ended up going to college, and it happened that I was playing sports. And so a coach came to see me and I didn't even know where the college was. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll go there. Like it was like that kind of reaction to like life and the
Mm,
choices at hand because I just
yeah.
wasn't confident in my own part, and I also felt like everything I was doing like was just being ripped away. So I went to college, didn't have much motivation, ended up with a business degree because at that time a friend's mom said, hey, you're good with math, why don't you do business. It was like that was the thought process of like how I was making decisions. So I said, okay, I'll do that. Left with the degree, and I ended up moving to New York City with no desire to go into business, right? Just was like, okay, I'll go into New York City. And there I started doing odd jobs, right? I working in bars, working in restaurants, just working construction, just doing whatever would come my way because that's like what I felt like I deserved. And lo and behold, a few years into it, I just hated where I was. I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like the results I was getting, but I continued to do that, right? I was doing chaotic things, getting chaotic results, and then asking why. Like, okay, well, you're doing chaotic things, so why am I not getting better results? And then each
Mm-hmm.
day expecting it to get better somehow magically just by hope. And lo and behold, like 5 years in, I think it was, like one night or maybe six, one night I'm leaving the bar, I'm on my bike, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, right across Manhattan, and out of nowhere I get hit by a car and get in the hospital, come out of hospital a day or so later with, I had a broken shoulder, a bunch of stitches, had a pin in my wrist, just all kinds of things, right? And
Oh my
my only
gosh.
thought was like, hey, I got to get back to work because I need to make money for rent.
Yeah.
And there's this slow pause where I was like, that's just a wild thought. Like here I am, like all these things happen, and all I can think about is getting back to exactly where I hate being. And I made this moment with myself where I said, okay, I don't know how or what, but I need to do something different, or I just need to stop complaining and just accept what I'm doing. It has to be one of those. So, for many listeners, like you don't have to have like this thing happen where you make a choice, but you have to ask yourself, like, do you want to do these same things? And if not, you have to try something different. And I didn't know what to try different, so I just got up the next day early and said, okay, let me start by just trying to get up early each day. Let me start to, work out. Let me stop going to bed so late. Let me start to read books again. Like I went to school and was like, I guess I don't ever have to read again. How fantastic, right? Like this like crazy thought. And then so I started to like read things like, and then started to just really, not drink at night. Like just these things that seem like no brainers, but lo and behold, these small little steps, doing them periodically. It wasn't this magic transformation, but things started to look better than look worse, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
the what is it, like an expectancy theory, like if you seek bad all the time you're going to get bad, right? Well, I was like seeking like everything was going to be horrible all the time and then things would not be
Yeah.
good, but then I started to look at the positive and lo and behold things started to look up, right? Like my words, my energy, like how I was viewing things, everything started to slowly improve. I went from working behind the bar to eventually I opened up a bar, opened up a restaurant, opened a brewery in New York City. And that was before I ended up moving to New Jersey when a hurricane happened on the East Coast to help my dad's family construction business really just take off and meet the demand. And we did that for a few years before moving into real estate. But it all just started by just saying, enough's enough, which you can do at any moment, but then taking the action, right? We can hope and then expect things to get better, or we can take action and then see how things get better. And
Yeah.
I was on the front side for most of my life until I was eventually was like, okay, start doing something, and what happens? And so the businesses we have today is because kept trying things, and then okay, I don't like that. Okay, well, what did I learn from that? Then move to the next. Oh, okay, this is kind of in the right path, but not exactly in the right path. Okay, what do we like and what is not to what we want to do, right? Okay, let's
Hmm.
take the pieces we like, let's build upon that. And that's where each step is built upon itself to get to where we are right now.
Oh, that thank you so much for sharing that. Like, and I think about like going back to like the turmoil and everything that you faced like in your teenage years. And I think of my kids, who are 21 and 17. And I'm like, I know that they don't have it all figured out. Heck, I didn't have it all figured out at that age. And I can't imagine being hit with life so hard at that age while you're still trying to figure out who you are, what your purpose is, and where you even want to go to begin with. And then everything just kind of comes flooding in. And what I find really interesting too is, a lot of people that I have spoken with, there's this really interesting like pattern of I kind of feel like I went through hell. I kind of feel like the world was completely against me. I kind of felt like the victim. And then for some reason, right, there's that flip, there's that switch, like, your instant with being hit by a car, which is absolutely crazy. So glad that you are doing good today. But what I find really interesting is one, that we don't realize that all of the small decisions that we are making on a regular basis, day to day, is actually what is going to take us to the next step. I think that social media and things like that project all of the huge things and the accomplishments that everyone makes, but nobody is really talking about all of these things, right? I decided not to go to bed late. I decided to stop drinking. I decided to stop hanging out with these specific type of people. Can you talk to the importance of realizing that and how that kind of also goes in with your coaching as well, in how you have seen that that really helps people that maybe you have worked with? Because I really want people to understand the power and significance that it is in making the small decisions and allowing those to compound, which can completely change the trajectory of your life.
We try so much to make the big decisions, right? Like I want to lose weight, so I want to lose 30 pounds, but like you're so focused on the 30 pounds that every day you feel like a failure, right? But instead of just saying, well, today
Mm,
maybe I'm going to get up and walk, 100 feet, or today I'm going to get up and instead of having, two break meals instead of in between like lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'm just going to have one snack between breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? These small things that are possible, right? Because we usually set the bar so high that we all ultimately make ourselves a failure the second we start.
yeah.
And the biggest piece to look at is just really being self-aware with yourself, because the hardest thing to do is actually point the finger back in yourself. But the easiest thing to do is blame
Mm,
everybody else, right? I can blame, oh, the government shutdown right now. I can blame the weather
yeah.
for what it's like. I can blame, my family, how I was brought up, the schooling I was around, the friends I was exposed to, the job I had. I can blame anybody, but I won't turn around and look at myself. And, you can see this all the time. Like you go and, I don't know, you go into the gas station, right? To grab, a drink, and lo and behold, like, hey, how you doing? The person's like, well, at least I'm not dead. And like that's like their approach to life. You're like, whoa,
Yeah.
but like many of us do that, right? We talk ourselves down before we're even at the gate. And so if you were to listen to your thoughts right now, or you were to have this out of body experience watching yourself operate, right? Would you think that's the person that deserves to have the success that you think you should have? Because ultimately, you do deserve it, but you might not be doing you might not be speaking in the way, you might not be operating in a way that gets you there, right? And so you have to say, okay, if I want to be this person, right, then I have to be self-aware of how I'm showing up. I'm showing up, I'm greedy, I'm hateful, I'm always in this part of looking for the worst in people. I'm always second down, guessing myself. I'm having self-doubt. Well, okay, the person that shows up that is successful, that is you. Well, what does that person do? When that person shows up, with confidence, talks best about themselves, tries to always help everybody else out, right? Just the small things, holds the door for people, right? Okay, so what is the shift from the person you are today to the person you want to be? What's that first step you have to do? Well, that stops talking in negatives, right? Oh, I can't, I won't, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, right?
Hmm.
Whatever that part. Well, I can. Why not me? Let's just try, right? All those things, they don't sound like a lot, but when you just put in there, you start to create optimism. If the initial thought is always, I can't, well, what if you just said, let me just see if I can figure it out? Those two things right there, maybe you still won't be able to do it, but at least you're going to try. And with that, you start building confidence that every time you see a roadblock, it's not actually a roadblock, it's just a detour along your path. And you say, okay, little detour, which honestly was not expected. But that's life, right? If we had the perfect path all the time, sure, then we would say, okay, everybody would be exactly where they want to be. But you get to the
Yeah.
road, you get to the destination by the road you're on, and the destination is that short-lived moment when you're there. But then you have to take the next trip.
Yeah. And you went back a couple times when you were talking about the language that we speak as well. I would love for you to elaborate on this one because even myself, for the longest time, like I didn't really see myself as like a negative person, but what I didn't realize was all of the like small little things that I was saying to myself that ended up having this huge adverse effect on what I allowed myself to accept or not accept, or the opportunities that passed me by because I wasn't open to looking for them, right? If I didn't see it the specific way that I had it laid out for my path, like I plan on doing this and I plan on getting this job, and then something came out of the blue, it's almost like it felt like it wasn't real or it wasn't meant to me. Or, we always hear that if it's too good to be true, like, right. And I've learned to like completely disagree with a lot of those perceptions. But I was that person for years that, if I did something, I was like, well, God, you're so stupid. Like you should know better, right? Like it's really interesting the way that we speak to ourselves and the way that that has such a weight in the direction that we make decisions for our lives. So how do you feel like, again, those small things, the language that we use, how do you see is that having an impact on the life that we are currently living today, whatever level we're at?
You ever heard of get to a no when you're selling stuff?
Yes.
So like that's a common part is that as a salesperson, right? All you do is sell all day, and if every time you hear no, you're dejected, you're defeated, right? You've lost all hope, right? Well, you're gonna have a very short life as a salesperson. But if you look at a no as a way to a yes, then you can understand, right, the value in the no. Because the worst thing
Hmm.
to get is a maybe, because it's not a no or a yes. But if you start to look at the no's you get, and every four no's leads to a yes, well, then what are you going to do? You're going to have more conversations because the quicker you get through four no's, you're going to get to a yes, right? And that's what we look in life is the first time we hear no or we have something go wrong, we just stop because we assume like, well, should have known it wouldn't have worked out, right? Or we take our
Yeah.
feedback from people that aren't really valued in giving you feedback. Like if I was to say, oh, today I'm going to go start a business, right? But then I go and I survey, people around me, and I go survey my uncle who's worked at the same factory for 45 years to retirement, never had any other job, did the same exact thing each and every day to retirement. I said, hey, I'm going to start a business. What do you think? It's probably going to be negative feedback because that person sees safety in the one thing that they always did, and anything outside of that seems risky, right? So you have to make sure that you put the value in your feedback, both to yourself and both from others in a way that it's conditioned to have a filter to it. So when you think of your words, right? There are times to be hesitant, right? There will be times to be, if it was like, oh, let's go, skydive off a bridge. Okay, there can be hesitation there. But if it's like, okay, I want to go and start a business. Well, instead of just saying, I'm stupid, I've never done this before, like, oh, I'm going to fail, right? Well, you don't have to take the risk just to say today you did this, tomorrow you go fail. There's so many steps
Hmm.
along the way to ask yourself, okay, what can I do to build confidence to see if this is the right way? Okay, what's my product? Who's my customer, right? What would be my avenue of getting this product to market? What would be this marketing? All these things you could start building behind you to start building confidence to see if there is some, feedback to you that helps you understand if this is the right path. But usually we just tell ourselves that it's just not going to work without really any proof or any experimentation along the way. And when you start to do that with your mind, with your thoughts, it gives you a way that you start to build confidence because instead of just saying it's not going to work with no value behind those words, you say, okay, this isn't going to work now that I've seen it, right? But what I have learned that if I structure this in a different way or I present this in a different manner, right, both in my mind and my thoughts, that is an avenue. And so it's basically testing.
Mm.
And you have to test within yourself all the time and just continue doing that because it gives you confidence by the actions. The confidence doesn't come by thinking it through. The confidence comes by trying and understand that when you tried it, may not have worked exactly right, but maybe it's a whole different avenue, right? Maybe it's something else that you've learned from it.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing is finding the lessons in the things that we consider failures. One of the things that, I really try to be aware of now is the language that I use when I'm talking about stuff like that, right? So if I have something that doesn't work out in the direction that I want it to, I do my best to not see it as a failure. I try to see it as like, okay, well, cool. So I learned a lesson. What did I learn from it? What is the direction I want to go? How do I want to shift this or move it this way? Because we're constantly learning. And like you said earlier, if we were all on like the perfect path, we wouldn't learn anything. So you would honestly end up being the same person with the same mindset and nowhere to actually go or grow because everything is so simple. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think about that, with all the things that I've been through and that my kids have been through over the last 10, 15 years. And when I saw it as everything was an issue, a failure, I had screwed up, it was really hard to be able to see the outcome and then learn from it so that you didn't end up repeating that pattern. And I think that it's really important that we recognize that even if you see it as a failure, recognize what was good and what was not good in it so that you still picked out the lesson so that you can make a different decision moving forward. And another thing that you said too, which I kind of want to reiterate to everybody, is you were talking about the people that you're around and the people that you take advice from. I'm sure everybody has heard, you're most like the five people that you surround yourself with. And I never understood that for like a really long time. Like, I'm like, no, I'm not, right? Like, I myself. But what was really interesting was understanding the psychology that's actually behind it, because we as individuals or as human beings are meant to be a community. Yes, I understand that some of us like to be in our own little hole and by themselves, but we are meant and we search for community. We're looking for people to be around, to validate us, to make us feel like we are included in this thing called life. And I never understood what it meant by who you surround yourself with until I started separating myself from people that caused a lot of drama, that, everything was always wrong, that fed into the beliefs I chose not to have anymore. And then really kind of taking that step back and going, wow. Like, I didn't think that I was being like them, but when I really start to think of the scenarios I put myself in and the things that I was talking about and the ways that I did things when I was around those people and even not, it reflected the same things that they were doing, where there was a similar personality, a similar belief. And I have found that to be kind of one of the coolest things is like, so understanding who you want to surround yourself with can make a major impact on your life. And so searching for those people that are, way ahead of you, right? Or have a completely different thought pattern that you do that you actually admire is, while it might sound challenging or, there's a lot of fear that comes with that because you're like, oh my gosh, but I'm not at that space. Your brain starts to want to be more like that because we're looking for those similarities. Do you feel that that's the same way in some of the things that you've kind of gone through in your life?
It's easy to be around people and then, ask yourself why are things not going that way? But if you do, I mean, when you have a set group, right, you'll see that you talk alike, you dress alike, you do the same activities or you trend to the same activities, whether you want to or not, you naturally tend to that. And it's a hard thing, because some of these people might be your family members. Not saying like you have to cut them off cold turkey, but you might have to
Mm-hmm.
limit how they are in your life, right? And there goes that point, like, love my grandma, but she went through the Great Depression, right? And if I was to ask her about something that, had risk to it, she's going to be very risk averse, right? Lived on a dirt floor, all these things that, grew up in that whole thing, right? And it would be completely normal for her to take that direction, right? But if you look at
Mm-hmm.
your friends, some of them have that path where their parents have done all this stuff, right? And their grandparents have done all this stuff, so they're going to do that same thing, right? So if you do, you're going to be the same person as everybody else. And are you going to like it? Maybe. But if you are saying, I don't like it, well, then you have to ask yourself, okay, what am I following? What are my thought process? What are the principles that I think are my principles? And are they actually your principles? Are they actually things that you should be following? Are they actually things that you really do believe in? Because our beliefs sometimes aren't even our beliefs, and many times aren't our beliefs, right? It's what we see on
Yeah.
social media, what we see from our friends, and we put them in fact that those should be our beliefs. But the hardest thing to do is stand up in the hill and say, actually, you know what? I don't believe in that. That's not what I think is right, not what I think I should do. So I'm going to take my own path, right? I'm going to do my own thing. Because what happens is that, people will say, okay, cool and good, but most are going to not really think it's going to be a good path because they can't believe it. They can't see it, right? They've never done it. In my direction, like, most of what I do is foreign to most of my friends, right? And they are on a different path. And because I'm not directly into that world that they're into, we don't talk as much as we've done before. Also, families, kids getting and growing, getting away too, right? But in the same front, we're just on different avenues. We're on different roads, and
Mm-hmm.
side by side, right? They're going forward, and I'm going forward, but we're just on different roads, and that destination that we're going to is different, is slightly different because of just the path that I've chosen versus what they've chosen.
And I love that, you bring that up that like that's not a bad thing as well, right? I think that we're always looking for so many similarities, people that we can relate to, people that
Yeah.
we feel
It's
like
not
might
black and
understand
white.
us.
Absolutely not black and
Yeah,
white.
100%. And, I feel like looking back at, when you're saying like family and stuff like that, when I think of like the things that my family has been through and stuff like that, it is one of the reasons why I love them to death, but I would never go to them and say, hey, I'm looking at doing this and I want to kind of build it out. What are your thoughts? Because there isn't that same understanding, that same mindset. They've been through completely different things than I have. And, the way that we perceive things or see things into the future is just on two completely different paths, like you're saying. So kind of with all of this, I know that this also kind of leads into like your coaching and the things that you do. How did you come up with this Live 100?
I just got a lot of questions about how I had gotten to the place I am today. And it seems quick, but it's not quick. And also, from the steps it's taken, but I just mentally look back about what I was doing, right? And how it came to evolve into where I was today. And I started putting this pattern together and started talking to it a lot, started to really help people in that same direction. So I started to put the principles down because people would ask, would you have this in a framework, right? And so we started to really
Mm,
condition it to it because it does start with, it goes for break, build, and magnify. Those are the three foundational blocks. So you have to break the habits that no longer serve you so you can start to build the future that you truly desire so you can maximize the results. And what you find along that way is really everybody wants to build. Everyone wants to build better. But if you don't have the foundation, you have nothing to build upon. And so that first block of breaking, right? It's about being self-aware how you're showing up and really owning it. And that's the next part is that you have to own it. And own is the hardest part because I'm not saying, I'm showing up, I'm greedy, I am hateful, and kick yourself and put yourself down. You just have to say, okay, I truly see that because a lot of people can call you out and give you labels and it could be true, but until you actually take it and say, you know what, it is right. I'm not showing up in a way that deserves the life that I'm telling myself I should have because I'm showing up, I'm putting people down, I'm bringing everybody else down, I'm taking myself down, right? And you have to own it so you can start to position yourself for greatness. And that's the next piece in the break is that you be self-aware how you're showing up, you own how you're showing up, and then you ask yourself, where do I want to be? Because now you can start crafting yourself of how you start taking the steps to get from where you are to where you want to be.
mm. Okay, so speaking of, breaking habits and recognizing your patterns, do you have any suggestions for people that are like, well, I've tried breaking those or I've tried to pay attention to some of the things that I do and like I keep finding myself going back to it. Do you have any tips for anyone that's kind of teeter-tottering on that space, where they know that they want to break the cycle and they want to quit thinking in the direction that they are, but for some reason they keep finding themselves back in that space?
So quitting and replacing, you should think about those two terms very clean. And the
Okay.
the thing is, I want to stop smoking, right? Okay, so I want to stop smoking. I want to stop smoking, but what I'm going to do now is not think about, okay, I smoke. There's 5 different times of the day that I smoke. I smoke when I get up, after I, drive to work, at lunch, and then when I get done at work, and then before bed, right? But you say I just want to quit smoking. But you just have 5 different windows of time right now where you've not replaced that with anything. And so when you ask yourself
Mm,
here, okay, if I'm going to stop smoking, I'm going to have all this dead time throughout my day. And so all my mind's going to be thinking about is, oh, I usually smoke. Oh, man, I just have to not smoke. I just have to not smoke. But you haven't replaced it. Okay, so what are you going to do in that time? What is going to fill that gap? Because you have to replace it with something because that time doesn't just evolve into something else. It's going to be dead space that you've now had a habit that's conditioned your life. So you have to find, what
mm,
do I place myself for? Right? What do I do now in that time? And you can start thinking about that. You can start using that time productively. So it's not all about don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. It's about, oh, I get to do this, right? I get to fill it with this. And that allows you to start starting that journey to breaking a habit. The next piece is just making the habit something of just of useful to you, so you can start using the habit in a good way. So if I would say, okay, instead of smoking, I'm going to drink. It's like, okay, well, that's probably not the best use of my time, right? But like,
yeah.
let's make sure that habit is pushing in the direction for where you are. And then also start tracking it too. So did I win today? Check. Did I lose today? X, right? And then each and every day, because to say that every day is going to be perfect, right? Probably not in the beginning. But if you can
Yeah.
start giving yourself the progress to say, okay, 30 days. 23 I won, 7 I lost. Okay, it wasn't all just a loss. Because you what we usually see is that we don't track it and all of a sudden day 14 we lose. We're like, oh, we lost. And just you go off the deep end and the next day, you know what? I'm just gonna start smoking again because I just can't do that. Well, you just did it for 13 days. So you had one day off.
Mm,
It's not all or nothing because we look at things as if like everything has to transform today and that's the end of it and then life's over, right? But we forget
yeah.
you'll be here 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. So you're setting this habit up for your future you, not just today. And you have to do it slowly and productively. And then understand that the path is not even, right? The path. And so, like, same thing with fitness. Like, you come out of the gate so quick where if you say, okay, I want to lose 30 pounds. Well, if your focus is just on, 30 pounds every day, you feel like you've lost, right? But if you say, okay, I'm going to start walking. Okay, well, today I'm going to go walk 2 miles. Well, you haven't walked in 4 years. And so you're like, okay, now I'm going to walk 2 miles. Like you're already setting yourself up for failure. I did this one time where someone was having trouble walking. We just set up like, okay, each day you're going to walk one more mailbox. And you got up the first day, you walked to one mailbox. Okay, cool. You did it, right? It doesn't seem like a lot, right? But if you
Hmm.
said 2 miles, your whole mind is like, oh, I'm three quarters of a mile in.
Yep.
I'm a failure. I just give up. Well, the next day, another mailbox, next day, another mailbox. And lo and behold, we went to a quarter mile, then a half mile, then 3/4 miles, then a mile, then 2 miles, right? But slowly but surely, it became something that was consistent, that they could track, and they could feel like they were winning each day because they were accomplishing
Hmm.
something more. And what happened? They started to lose weight. And it was weight that was staying off because it wasn't this day where you tried to go, 2 miles, you don't get it, you do 3/4 of a mile, but you haven't even done that in a couple of years. So now you're so sore. So now you don't walk again for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden you're just back into your old way of not walking at all. So you have to set up roadmap, consistency, understand what's going to replace the habit that was there, and then understand that the road is not just a black or white like we talked about before. Some days are good, some days are not. Okay.
Yeah.
We have
Oh,
more good days than before.
I freaking love this. And I love the idea of tracking it as well because like the first thing that came to mind was how many people like lose weight that are trying to lose weight and the only thing that they are focused on is the scale. And if the
Hmm.
scale is not moving, then they're not doing anything else. And so I love the idea of tracking the little bitty things, the little small habits that you're doing so that you are creating really what you're doing is you're building a completely different belief of yourself, right? If
Yeah.
you believe that you're going to do this, but then every time that you do small things and you're not paying attention to it, your belief goes, well, see, you still didn't do it. I told you you weren't going to do it. I knew we were going to fail at this. But when you build in those little bitty things, those little bitty habits, like you're talking about, you're giving yourself those little small wins, which, by the way, I don't think that people understand the importance of celebrating those small wins. Like, celebrate the heck out of them because like you said you chose to do something different and even if it's not the same every single day if you're making that choice and then you choose to make that choice again and then you make it again and something else doesn't work you can come back to the wins or hopefully you decide to come back to the wins because you have to be able to balance it out and our brains are not set to pay attention to the wins, right? It's not set to pay attention to the good things. It is set to pay attention to the negative. Unfortunately, it's just the way that our brain is wired. So it does take a little bit more effort and energy from us to pay attention and build those pieces and like you said those foundational spaces so that we can come back to a winning space.
I had a friend that was wanting to run his first marathon. He couldn't get past this one stop sign. It was 3 miles, and he'd always stop at this part. So one day he was like, "Yeah, I always just have to stop at that stop sign." So we ran, and I was like, "Let's just run another 100 feet." That's all it was. It was just running past the stop sign where his mind had told him he couldn't run past the stop sign, right? And all we did was run 100 feet. And then a couple of days later, he ran 4 miles and then, 4.5 miles because all we had done is just understand that was a mental block that was keeping you from
Mm,
stopping. And so many times in life, we have these mental blocks where you've told yourself something for so long and then you just can't get out because in your mind, that's exactly what it is, right? If I
yep.
go and get in a relationship with someone great, I'm gonna mess it up. So I'll just won't look for anybody because I don't want to mess it up because I'm not ready, right? Or all these things you tell yourself. And so the first thing with anyone here is that you have to condition yourself to understand that you are worth it and that you deserve to have a great life. But it starts with you inside. Like you're going to struggle each and every day to battle with yourself. And then say you even get better at it. Well, the next day starts and you have to do it all over again, right? And you're going to do that for the rest of your life, right? You go to bed, you wake
Hmm.
up, and you have to deal with those same thoughts. So it's preparing yourself each and every day to put yourself in the best light by focusing on just good thoughts, and just good words out of your mouth. And it is very simple to do once you pay attention to it, but very hard to relate to when you're not because it seems foreign. But the more you do it, the more you condition yourself to a pattern that starts to understand that it is possible for you to go out there and change things. Starts with you knowing you can, starts with you believing you can, and then you taking action. And those three things right there can change a lot for you very quickly.
Oh, I love that. Now, in all of this, and we talk about creating habits and things like that. How important do you think it is at having like a morning routine and an evening routine, like some form of habits on how you start your day and how you end your day?
I think the morning to me is more important, but everybody's gonna be different, right? But I
Hmm.
like this is that I get up and I have a set thing that basically sets the stage for the day. So I get up early, have a glass of water, I go meditate, I go work out, right? And now that I've just done that, I do the same thing each and every day, and now I'm ready for the day, right? And I've gotten some wins off the board. I can go in, my wife's getting up, I can go see the kids, get the kids off to school, and then go into work, right? And if I get to, into the office and there's 4,000 things going wrong, well, I've already had my wins, and now I can focus on that. Right. But if I
Mm,
get up in chaos, then my day goes in chaos. So say you wake up
yeah.
late, you're rushing out the door, so you grab something poor to eat, you stub your toe, maybe you're short with your spouse, right? And then you jump in the car, you forget your keys, go back, get your keys, right? You get on the road, you get stuck in traffic, you're mad, you get to work, and it's just one thing after the other, after the other, after the other, and you're just, the whole day is just on fire. You get back, you're stuck in traffic on the way home, you get home, you grab a beer, you watch Netflix, and you're like, never am I going to have a day like that again. And then you repeat the same thing for a decade, right? And you're like, what has happened? It's because the day has just started in chaos. And when it does, everything feels like a disaster because all you're doing is living in disaster. So the more you can control the start of your day, it can give you that focus, that pause, just to allow the day to come at you. But then you have the opportunity to react in a manner that's in control.
Okay. I love this because I have some people that are like very ritualistic when it comes to like morning routine and evening routine. And I think for me too, I'm more of like a morning person is kind of how I am. For me, it's a little bit easier to unwind. I know that like I'm not looking at social media right before I go to bed, right? And I'm not doing a bunch of checking emails and stuff like that. So I guess I kind of have like a routine in the evening of just kind of calming down. But I think it's more for me, it's more boundaries
Hmm.
before I go to bed so that I make sure that I can actually relax to be able to go to sleep. But I do think that it is so important to create that habit in the morning. And what's really funny is, you were saying about getting up late and having to get to work and stuff like that. When I used to work in the medical field, like I found myself doing that. You get up in the morning, I'd be like, okay, we got to get the kids together. I got to get all their stuff. I got to get them out the door. And then straight to work I would head and then into the things that I needed to do. There was never a space for me in the morning to just wake up and be at that time. And it really is interesting now that I make space for that, how much it shifts the way that I have the capacity to hold space for things that might not go exactly how I want them throughout the day, right? Because life is life. Even when you shift your perspectives and things are going better, like crap happens. It just is what it is, especially when you have kids, right? But the capacity that I have to be able to hold that versus being so reactive to it has completely flip-flopped from the way that it used to be. And I find myself having the moments to be able to say, okay, this is not how that was supposed to go, but I see this, and now I can actually see the solution where I feel like you were saying, when we wake up in chaos or we wake up to just start the day immediately or wake up and scroll and things like that, you you turn your brain into this chaotic, mushed space, and it doesn't have the ability to have any clarity. And because it does not, it's hard for you to have clarity when you actually need it in the times of the day when things do happen.
Yeah, you can't separate the urgent and the important, right? And it's like
Yeah.
every day is just everything is yeah, like everything's a fire when most things aren't fires. And so you treat everything as like a fire because you're out of control. And when you're out of control, everything else seems like out of control because it's just one thing
Yeah.
compounded onto the next, compounded onto the next. And when that happens, your life feels like a train wreck, when in fact it's not. Like most listening here have a fantastic life compared to many, and on that front, but we think we have a horrible disaster of a life, when in fact there's just a couple of things going wrong. And because we're not being able to control ourselves, we can't actually focus on the things wrong and then look for a solution because it just says everything's a disaster. So, my life's a disaster. No, it's
Mhm.
not. There's a few things that aren't going to let's say they're not meeting the narrative that you thought they would. So
Yeah.
if you can get control of what you have right now and then look at those few things and identify them, then you start writing down, okay, this is a problem that is something I can solve instead of just saying it's a problem, right? Okay, so what's the
Mm,
solution? You start looking at the solution and you start getting a roadmap to get to the other side of this problem at hand.
yeah. And I think that it also goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Which is the words that we choose to use. One of the things that I used to find myself doing was if a few things happened, like stuck in traffic, had a bad patient that I was dealing with, or something like that, it'd be like, my day sucked.
Yeah.
Now it's I had a moment. So I've
Hmm.
completely shifted because you do it, you create your own narrative, you create your own story, and your brain is going to believe whatever it is that you're telling it. And then it starts to like black out or delete, right? All the things that weren't so bad. And it becomes so much easier to be like, yeah, this day sucked and this day sucked. So this whole freaking week has sucked instead
Yeah.
of saying, like, this was just a moment. Like, I
Yeah,
had a really
one bad
crappy
thought.
moment.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
one
one
bad
bad
thing
thought.
can just ruin everything, right? It's like having a cup of like just a cup of water, and that cup of water is all of your good thoughts. And then you have a cup of black coffee, and you just take a pin drop of black coffee and put it into the water, and the whole water is distorted. Like that's how like our mind works with negativity, and that's
Hmm.
why it's so strong and it's so important to focus on the positive because negative can like you get cut off in traffic, right? And that could like ruin your weekend. And you're like, maybe that person was like on the way to the hospital. You have no idea, or just didn't even see you, like, right? But like that one
Yeah.
little thing can like ruin your weekend. And it's not even a big deal. But we let those events where like everything could have been great. You could have had the best week ever. And like these little things, you're like, oh, can you believe this happened? And it's like everything's ruined over something that really is something you can throw away. And the more
Hmm.
we get back to really say, okay, no, that happened. Okay, no big deal. Let's just move on to what's positive. Life just gets better.
Yeah. Yeah, and just for anybody that's listening, we're not saying that you're not going to have crappy moments. We're not going to say that you can't lose your temper in a moment if somebody cuts you off and you're like,
Mhm.
like the emotions are natural. That's normal. You should have that. The other piece of it is, do you end up letting that one small incident control the way the rest of your day goes versus seeing it as a moment, even if you do lose your temper or get frustrated. Like emotions are normal, and I think that we need to understand that, and that includes anger. I think that, we are taught, or maybe it's just kind of like an unwritten norm that like if you get angry you're an irate person, you're a terrible person. It's like, no, anger along with sadness and everything else, like those are just normal. We are going to feel those. What we choose to do with that is then what makes the difference. Do I choose to ruminate in that for the next 6 to 8 hours, and so then everything turns into that, or do I choose to have that one moment, deal with it, let go, and then move on to the next?
100%.
Now, you said that you also have a podcast, right?
Mhm.
Called Live 100. Tell us a little bit about your podcast. What are the things that you teach, that you coach on in your podcast as well?
So the podcast is usually pretty quick, 5 to 10 minute episodes that will focus on one topic for the day, right? And it does follow a lot with the framework of Live 100. So speaking to break, build, and magnify. So usually that podcast and that day will focus on some principle that aligns with the Live 100 message. And want a quick action and an actionable, right? And you get out, you leave with a message, but you leave with a takeaway and something you can implement right away.
I love that. And I love that, right? Like quick actionable steps. Yes, I know everybody, my podcasts are super long, but that's okay.
Hey, it has a place too, right?
It does,
So,
right? I
yes,
also just love to talk. So it just is what it is. But so where can everybody find you? How can they follow you? How can they
sure.
learn more about all of this?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Jason Yarusi. You can find the podcast and pretty much where you'll listen to podcast. And if you want to learn more about real estate, yarusiholdings.com.
Nice. I appreciate that. And of course, we'll make sure we have all that information in the show notes. So we'll make it super simple for you guys to find it. We'll link the podcast in there so you guys can go and take a listen to that as well. I think it would be a really great routine, right? To start your morning with
Let's
something like
go.
that if you don't have a routine yet. Jason, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Is there
Thanks,
anything
Kat.
that you would like to leave the audience with?
No, this has been a great talk, and I hope listeners take the action because that's the next piece. Don't just keep learning, take the action and learn from the action.
100%. Oh, thank you so much, Jason. I loved all of your insight and knowledge that you're sharing with everyone. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Yeah, to everybody else out there, We should have been taking notes. I know that everybody is looking to start their 2026 in a different way, in a different light. And I understand that there are so many things out there that it becomes very overwhelming, or you feel like there's this mountain that you have to climb in order to shift the way that you want your life to be. And I hope that you have learned from this podcast today that that's not true. You can start with the small, actionable steps. How are you going to shift those habits? What are the things that you think that you want in your life now? And are you open to seeing where that leads you so that you can always continually start to see, I enjoy this, I don't enjoy that. So you continue to plow that path that you are wanting to live in your life. So until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. Catch you later.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Chat with Kat today, where real stories meet real solutions. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple, and share this with someone who may also need to hear this as well. Let's also keep the conversation going. Follow me on socials at The Lotus Effect, connect with our incredible guests, and remember, you are never alone. Your story matters, and you have the ability and the power to rewrite it. You always have a choice. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and keep showing up as the incredible, unstoppable